I want to thank everyone for taking the time out of the week to be here, and we're really excited to have some good dialogue today. Before we get started, I need to acknowledge our sponsor of all of our virtual programming right now, which is Field Turf, and I'm going to read a message from our sponsor. Field Turf is proud to sponsor this virtual meeting. A lot may have changed over the past few months, but Field Turf's dedication to providing you with a quality and high performance surface remains unchanged. Field Turf is the trusted home surface of numerous NCAA programs like Monmouth University, Westchester University, and Towson University, to name a few, as well as elite venues across the world. As an FIH preferred supplier, Field Turf has a dedicated series of field hockey specific systems. Field Turf's Hockey Gold system is truly revolutionary. The product is built with the elliptical fiber, a uniquely engineered filament with the same reliable, built-in durability characteristics that Field Turf products have been known for. It's designed specifically for the highest levels of field hockey play. If you have questions on upgrading your facility, you can find your Field Turf expert at fieldturf.com. And that was my one broadcast moment for you. I'd like to introduce our leaders for this coffee talk. First, the founders of the Black Field Hockey Coaches Network. Head coach Brandi, who is the head coach at Queen's University of Charlotte in North Carolina. She played at the University of Pennsylvania and previously coached at Appalachian State, St. Louis University, and Lindenwood University. I'm going to welcome Brandi. Julia Morrow, head coach at Bridgewater State University in Massachusetts. She played at Old Dominion University, which she was previously an assistant at MIT. And along with Brandi, as I said, they're the founders of the BFHN group. Also our guest today, who, if you need to, you can go to Old Dominion. She's hanging on the wall right when you walk in. It's like a pretty amazing shot, is Mimi Smith. She's the owner and coach of Reach Field Hockey in Maryland. As I said, she played at Old Dominion University and is a part of their Hall of Fame. Was on the U.S. Women's National Team from '99 to 2004. She represented the U.S. at the World Cup tournament, the Pan Am Games, and 4 national tournaments. Her accolades are long. She received the Honda Broderick Award for field hockey in '99 and is on the CAA 25th anniversary team. So we're really excited to have these 3 leaders guide us through the day. Lastly, I just need to remind those of you that have not registered or renewed their membership. If you have any budgetary constraints, you're welcome to go ahead and use the coupon code, or you can contact Kirsten, who's up in the corner for you, if you have any questions. So let me turn it over to our wonderful leaders and guests for the day.
Thank you very much, and thank everybody for being here. We'll just go through some little quick intros. I'm Jules. As Becca said, I'm from Virginia Beach, Virginia. I went to ODU, played under Beth Anders. After college, I went into the real world. I moved to Austin, Texas. I worked for corporate Apple. I worked at a children's hospital in a rehab department. I then became a teacher, fell in love with education. I was a special education teacher for many years. And I also coached high school at one of the private schools out there, one of the rare schools in Texas that has field hockey, though it is growing, which is really exciting. So in 2016, I really wanted field hockey back in my life. And my experiences in Austin, you know, the Black population was leaving. I could go to the grocery store, I could go to work and come home and never see anybody who looked like me. So that was not sustainable for me and my family. And so, coupled with really wanting field hockey back in my life, job search began, and I came to Boston and spent 3 years at MIT. And now I'm head coach at Bridgewater State. So that's me. Some of you I know, good to see you. Thank you again for being here.
Yeah, so I'm Brandi, originally from Philly, went to Penn, and then left Philly and really haven't gone back, though I still miss my cheesesteaks. You know, I've been down in the Carolinas now for about 15 years, and just not necessarily a place I was like, oh yeah, let me move to the Carolinas. We're definitely in the South, you know, and just especially over the past couple months and the interactions I've had with even, you know, my neighbors and, you know, things like that. It's just, this is really important work, you know, definitely near and dear, and where we felt we can make the big difference is within our own field hockey community, where we still absolutely have a lot of work that we need to keep working on and doing. So thank you guys again for joining the call here. We really appreciate this.
Hi, everybody. Mimi Smith. My passion is field hockey, women athletes, female athletes, and like behavior mental health. So I'm still very involved in field hockey. I have reached field hockey in the Baltimore area. I'm an NCAA official. I still play. I played on the U.S. Masters indoor and the Masters outdoor team. I play all the time. I'm coaching. And then my day job, I work with people who have mental health and substance abuse issues, and I help to direct them to treatment if and when they're ready, and that process of staying healthy. So I'm super excited to get started with this organization and this movement. And I'm ready to push the go button. So nice to see everybody.
Oh, wait, I'm on mute. Just talk a little bit more, just more specifically about the Black Field Hockey Network, how we came about, how we started, and kind of what our mission, what our goals are. For when we started, it just started as a conversation with the NFHCA, and we've been really happy. Some tough conversations for sure have been had over time, but what's been really important through this movement for me personally is to really work to remove the barriers that we faced as athletes based on the color of our skin coming through the sport and the experiences we have had to endure, even now as coaches, and remove those barriers for those younger athletes coming up through the sport, so that when ultimately they're playing, that they can just be involved in the sport and there is no issue in terms of the color of their skin. So that's one of the important things really for me as we have been creating and building this network.
And on my end, one of the things that I see as a club coach that was really difficult to accept is every now and then I will have one Black athlete, and to watch how that athlete is treated differently by parents when they are successful. So they could do the exact same thing as one of my white players, and she's celebrated and she's so good. And when that Black player does the exact same thing, or even when she messes up, how she is ridiculed, and even how her teammates kind of begin to move away. It was really a difficult reality. I didn't want to acknowledge and accept that that was the case, especially with someone on my team. But seeing that happen, I knew that there needed to be some education that happened, and even helping people be aware that they were doing it, because I don't believe they were doing it intentionally. At least that's me giving them the benefit of the doubt. But it happens. And I think, Brandi, Jules, and I have experienced that as well.
Another big piece, sorry, dog. Another really important piece is the current student athletes who are playing field hockey. We had our players forum, and so to be able to hear from them, their experiences, they're not at all dissimilar from what we experienced many years ago. A lot of people, coaches, think that because a player isn't coming to you, that it's not happening. Racism, microaggressions, microinvalidations aren't occurring. So it really felt good to provide a space for them to hear from them and know that they are supported. So that's some of the important reasons why we started the Black Field Hockey Network.
Yeah.
As we move through this conversation, one of the things that came up in response is that we received was just how uncomfortable, and kind of where to start with these conversations, and how uncomfortable they can be, and maybe how quiet the room gets. This conversation is no different. It's going to be uncomfortable. We're going to challenge you a bit as we go through, but we ask that you really sit with that feeling of being uncomfortable, and embrace it. After this call, you kind of get to step away and go about your day. But being white is the default in our country, and you haven't really had to consider race that often. But for us, for Black people in this country, it is a daily daily thing that we are aware of our race. And the discomfort that you feel from time to time in discussions like this by Black people in this country, we feel that on a daily basis for a lifetime. So we really just ask that you get comfortable with the uncomfortable here. You know, as coaches, we talk a lot about our athletes. You know, that's where growth happens, is when you push yourself out of that comfort zone, when you really challenge yourself. That's really where you're hitting those areas of growth. So we ask you to embrace the uncomfortableness, to you know, to really learn, open yourself up, and grow through this conversation, and hopefully for future conversations as well.
And just to piggyback on that really quick, what Brandi said, if you do find that you're uncomfortable, it just means that there's more work that you need to do, and that's it. And as you begin to have these conversations with your teammates or your players and even your colleagues, you have to remember that it's not about you. So like a lot of times people feel attacked, they feel like they must defend their position. It's not about you. Your role, responsibility is to support and educate, and kind of navigate and put people, you know, in the direction of what they might need or what they're asking for.
Okay, we're gonna get a little interactive here. Please raise your hand if you've experienced harassment, sexual harassment, catcall, any type of harassment. I'm gonna flip the page here. We got a lot of people. Let's see some hands. Okay, thank you. How many of you spoke up about it? Said something? Okay, thank you. How many of you told someone in power? Thank you. And how many told your assailant? Thank you. As Black coaches, Black athletes, Black people in field hockey, we experience racism, form of harassment, these slights, and we don't always say something. We're conditioned not to. It's not a big deal. It's a joke. She didn't mean it that way. We're told to minimize our experiences and to be small. So it's very similar to how you've experienced sexism, harassment. Again, just because someone isn't saying something, there's many reasons that people don't report these instances. So almost start to assume that it is there. And how do you tackle that? How do you get the issue before it becomes an issue?
So I'm gonna, you know, pose a scenario to you guys. A lot of the feedback that we got from the survey was just being able to understand, kind of on a day-to-day basis, in our experiences as Black people in the realm of field hockey. So I'm gonna throw out a scenario to you guys to consider. So you're out in the field. You know, your team's kind of drifting out of the locker room, getting their shin guards on, you know, kind of talking, gathering right before they start their warm up. It's raining. Your Black player comes out wearing a Walmart bag on their head. What is the reaction? Anybody?
Oh, no reaction.
No reaction. Okay.
So let's be honest. I'm sure there are going to be people who laugh because they don't understand. And then it's our job to check that if we're the coach.
Yep.
I don't think
so.
I mean, that's the reality.
Yep. So this happened on my team, where one of my Black players came out with a Walmart bag on her head, and I could see all my white players turning, and they started looking at her, and I could see the reaction starting to build the closer she got out to the field. So as soon as she walked up, I made a comment. I was like, "Oh, hey, you just got your hair done." She's like, "Yep." Like, okay, let's go. Let's keep it moving. So recognizing that situation and being able to, you know, see her, acknowledge her, you know, and kind of indirectly, but still educate everybody else, like, this is why she just got her hair done, you know, and being able to understand that, and that it's not a big deal. So what, she's wearing the plastic bag on her head. Okay, we have practice, let's go. So, you know, just understanding, and some of the questions that we received actually had a lot to do about hair. You know, comments along the lines of, oh, your braids make you look so scary, or you look so ghetto wearing those braids. Like, is that a necessary comment? Where does that come from? And understanding, you know, kind of the depth of how hurtful comments like that can be, and examining why is that where the comments go, you know, and what that perception is that you look ghetto because you're wearing braids. So just having that discussion and understanding of, you know, kind of how important the hair culture is for Black people. And, you know, one of the things, there's a recent study, I'm probably gonna be slightly off on these numbers, about 45% of Black women cite their hair as their biggest obstacle to fitness. Their hair, almost half of Black women cite their hair alone as an obstacle to fitness. And it's the same in our sport. And some of these comments are a big reason. You know, even younger players, when they are, you know, some comments are made about their hair, it's like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to have to deal with walking up to practice every day and answering these questions. So it's not fun for them, and they don't get involved, or they don't stay involved.
Yeah, I was going to say that's really a big one. There's a U14 player, and she told her mom, she said, what am I going to do when I go to college? She's U14. She goes, what am I going to do with my hair? And just hearing that, like that being the biggest concern that she has, it's sad. And just being able to normalize that this is something that's really important. The same way that sunblock is to white players, like sunblock, it's everything. And while Black players wear sunblock, it may or may not happen, but we might tie our hair up. Everybody's gonna have a scarf when they travel and things like that. Just know that this is a thing, because you can start practice looking one way and come out looking a completely different way. And it's just, it's what happens, you know, and just being able to make it okay and not have that player feel weird will be so welcome.
Another scenario, we're here in August, preseason should be starting. White player says to coach, says to the player, comes up to them, you know, oh my God, I'm just as dark as you are. Puts their forearm right up to the player's forearm. What's wrong with that? Why is that? Is that a big deal? Does that need to be addressed? It's completely unnecessary. It's inaccurate. You're not as dark as I am. You're not going to be treated differently. You're not going to be treated the same way that I am, that my darkness is treated as your darkness is treated. It's othering. It is isolating. It is pointing out to every, you know, the 20 group of people, hey, you're really dark. Why do you feel the need to do that? That type of comment does need to be addressed. It does need to be, it doesn't have to be a big thing. You can quickly say something to your player, hey, we don't talk like that. Hey, that's unnecessary, and follow up later as to how your teammate may have felt, you know, something like that. But it does need to be said. That's helpful. That's a welcoming space for the Black athlete to see you as a white coach speak to that, recognize that, oh, that wasn't okay, and I'm going to say something. That feels like I, as the Black player, don't have to do it every single time. I'm not alone. I'm not alone in addressing microaggressions, micro-invalidations. You see it, you heard it, just like I did. Coaches being mistaken. I was flying, doing recruiting. I'm wearing a fleece that says MIT Field Hockey on it. Sitting next to somebody in the airplane. Of course, you start talking, and I said, yeah, I'm a collegiate coach. Oh, you coach basketball? Those of you who know me know that I am 5'6" on a good day, but like in reality, I'm 5'3". And I'm not good at basketball. I'm learning. I'm so glad the NBA is back at WNBA. I'm not a basketball player. I'm not a basketball coach. Why would someone just assume that I coach basketball? Right? While I'm wearing something that says MIT Field Hockey. Yeah, I think it's racist. I think that's a small racist act.
Yeah, another one that's really common is teammates will say, and this absolutely happened to me all the time. Oh my God, you're so pretty. What are you? And I'm Black. No. Like, what are you? Well, where are your parents from? Oh, like both of your parents are Black? And like that is all the way like wrong. Like, what are you? And again, it's just ignorance. And I really, like, if you hear that, like, that needs to be like addressed. Like, wait. Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? What are you? I'm a human being. I'm a woman. What do you mean? But that is one that happens often, very often.
And when players do approach, so what we're hearing from our current players and a lot of our experiences as well, is that when a player does approach a coach and say, this happened, they're not believed. And the reality, like, you often as a white coach, as a white person, don't want to believe something racist happened, or you don't see it as racist, see it as a slight. So why would they continue to come to you if you're not going to believe their experience? It's not, none of these things, these examples that we've shared are someone saying the N-word, right? That's when that happens, it's, oh my gosh, this is very clear, overt racism. But the covert, the undertones of racism are what also drive Black people from the sport. It makes them not want to pick up the stick, not return, as well. So why would they err on the side of believing them when something occurs?
Yeah, I want to add one thing to that, Jules. I think this is one of the most important things as we navigate this conversation. Someone can make a racist comment and not be a racist. So I think white people, when they hear racist, they immediately get defensive. I am not a racist. I'm a nice person. I'm this. But the same way I can make a judgmental statement about somebody and not, be generally judgmental. So you can do both. You can make a racist comment and not be racist. And I think that it's important when people do that to let them know that their comment was racist. I understand that you're not. And I think we know that. Like, we know that that's not the case, but it was a racist comment. And I think it's important to say that because nobody wants to be that.
Breakout sessions?
Yeah, let's get into it. So we're going to go ahead. We have a couple of other scenarios that we want to go a little bit more in depth with. So we're going to go ahead and break out into 3 different groups, and we're going to kind of spin these scenarios to you and just have some good dialogue around them. So let's go ahead. What do you think, Jules? 10 minutes?
Yep, let's stick with 10.
Yeah, okay. So Kirsten, if you can put us in the breakout rooms.
We back.
Everyone's back, Mimi, if you
Are you
want to.
talking to me?
Okay.
Mimi?
What's that? Everybody back? I just, an important, so Jules, Brandi, we didn't get to our number 2, but we had something that came up that I wanted to address with the group. So the question was just about Black Lives Matter. And I think people in theory say they support it, but they're not able to verbally out loud say, I support Black Lives Matter. I asked the coaches how they feel about that. How do they feel about being in pictures with the signs, Black Lives Matters, the signage? How do they feel about that? What conversations have you had in your position? And Missy started to say something, and I wanted her to share that with the group, please.
Our team, I reached out to a Black athlete on my team when George was murdered, and she basically emailed back and communicated very clearly that she appreciated it, but it just wasn't good enough. And in that regard, young player, super bold, incredible young woman. Subsequently, our team was reality of being very fearful, defensive, kind of white, unknowledgeable people in a world that we thought we understood. So we created a social justice group and created our own logo and a big turtle shell with Black Lives Matter. Subsequently, the research came, and I'm just really big into right now, just educate to activate, do the best that we can and be as productive as we can in that way. And then through that, I was sharing with Mimi and our group that from that came almost a justification. Well, wait a minute, what is the history of Black Lives Matter and the people that started it? And is it a positive thing? And I was asking Mimi, being a Black field hockey player, how, and coach and mentor, how you answer that question. And that's it.
Yeah. Brandi and Jules, I'm writing that down so that we can if we get to that later today, but we will provide resources for having that conversation because that is important. Thank you, Missy. Brandi, Jules.
So we kind of want to get into and address some of the specific questions that were posed to us through the survey, which we really appreciate everybody being really open and honest with those questions. So the first one is, how can I best support my Black athletes? We touched on this a little bit, just about making it a safe space for your student athletes. For, you hear these, micro invalidations or microaggressions, it has to be addressed right away, on the spot. And again, as we talked about, it doesn't have to be some big confrontation. It's a simple comment of, hey, we don't talk like that, and keep it moving. And maybe if you want to have a conversation, after practice or something like that, great. But if you make a whole big deal about it, it even further singles out your Black athlete. So just that quick little comment, and then you keep it moving, is the best way, just in that moment, to stop it. Acknowledge your Black player and let them know that they are supported. But even deeper is, we all should be doing this with all of our players, but establishing that relationship with your Black player. And a big part of that is being vulnerable and making sure that they know that you want to help them. You want to make sure that the team environment, the team culture is a safe and inclusive space for them, and that you want to support them. You may not really have any idea of where to start with that. You may make mistakes along the way, but let your player know that. Let them know that you're coming from a good place and you want to support them, and whatever input that they have, or comments or concerns or questions, let them know it's okay for them to come talk to you about it. And again, you may make a mistake, but opening up that vulnerability and admitting that, hey, I don't always know the right thing to say or to do, but let me know and I'll do whatever I can to support you, is really big. And even if they're like, oh no, coach, everything's okay, just having that conversation, they're going to feel seen. And it might not be right away. It might be a week later. It might be the following season, where they then can come to you and be like, hey coach, let's have this talk. But the fact that you went out of your way to have that conversation and discussion with them, but really building that relationship and connecting with them. When we had the player forum, you know, that was one of the things that, and we mentioned it a little bit earlier, is that players did do that. Some players did do that, but then the response was like, oh, well, nobody else feels that way. So no, it's not an issue. Well, no, of course nobody else feels that way because nobody else is Black. Nobody else is Black on the team. So that invalidation of their experience right there is like, you just destroyed that relationship and that experience for that Black player.
I would say
Yeah, Brandi.
resources.
Yeah, go ahead, Jules.
Resources. Thanks. So if you're at a school that's like, you know, predominantly Black, or excuse me, predominantly white, where are they going to get their hair done? You can direct them to that because you looked into it, right? Here's what the Black student union group is, connecting them. Hey, here's other, knowing that they're the only one on the team. Like, are they going to be the only one in their entire experience? We have the players forum, directing them to the Black Field Hockey Network so they can meet and connect with other Black people, other Black field hockey players, so that they're not completely alone. Having policies. My group did get into our second scenario, which was, you know, the N-word in music. What is your policy? It is different. The N-word is not a curse word. It's different. So you need to be able to say, here's our policy on, you know, profanity in music in the locker room. Here's the policy on the N-word in the locker room. I'll share with you all, I share with my group, the breakout session. I allow, you know, the N-word inside the locker room until I hear someone say it. And then the policy will change. What's your policy stating your policy around Halloween? I told them, no blackface. If you go to a party and someone's wearing a blackface, you need to leave because you don't even want to be associated with that and caught in that photo. You need to be very explicit and speak to it before there is an incident. That's supporting Black people in field hockey, your Black athletes.
And just with what Jules said, you can even cite recent incidents of what happened with political figures when the blackface photo comes up. You can say that, you know, in 10, 15 years, you're going to regret taking that picture. So you have like something, you know, current that you can go with. And to speak with Brandi's point of support, I did a webinar call with a bunch of with corporate people, the majority white, and most people cited them not acknowledging what happened with George Floyd and calling their Black friends or colleagues because they didn't know what to say. Just fear of saying the wrong thing, so they did nothing. And as a Black person, acknowledgement and even honesty is so important. Just to say, like, practice what you're going to say. Hey, Jules, I don't know what to say. I thought about this. I'm really uncomfortable. I just want to make sure you're okay. When it comes to a Black athlete coming to your team, you can say, hey, Jules, listen, it's obvious you're the only Black player on the team. I have no idea what it is to be Black, but tell me what you need. What is it that you need? This is the Black Student Union. This is this. Here's some resources, Black Field Hockey Network. But if you take that approach of owning that you don't know, but you've gone to them, they will really appreciate that. You can start with, I have no idea. And they will giggle, and it really eases the tension immediately.
And along those lines too, and this came up in a different conversation as well. When you're recruiting, let's say you have a Black recruit coming in, and you already have maybe one Black player on your team. Are you pairing that Black player up with the Black recruit? Even though on your team you may have somebody that a white player that that Black recruit played club with, or they're from the same area. Because that happens. That has come up in discussion that white coaches will on recruiting visits, pair up the Black recruit with the Black player that they have. Just what does that mean? Why? You know, and thinking about that. I mean, at least for Jules and I, our approach is much more, what do you have in common? You know, what is your major? You know, maybe it is, where are you from? Maybe from a similar area or similar personality. Of course, I think we all probably maybe have those players that we're like, I'm not going to put a recruit with you anyway. But, you know, just being more thoughtful about that in everything you do with recruiting, you know, Black student athletes.
To piggyback on that, just with recruiting, coaches, I think you should be prepared to have the conversation about Black Lives Matter, your position on Black Lives Matter, what you're doing to support diversity. I had a Black club player, and they were very socially conscious, active. Her parents were, and she went to an all-white school, which created some issues anyhow. And when we were looking for schools, her mom and the athlete would say, I don't see anybody that looks like me. Do you know what the coach thinks? And I said, ask her. This was right after George Floyd. I said, it's okay to ask the coach. You can say, what is your position on Black Lives Matter? And I told the player, I said, if you're not comfortable, get your mom to ask. And I said, go look at their student page, look for their alumni organization. And luckily, the school that they were looking at had a Black alumni association connected to that school. So I am actively encouraging my Black athletes to ask the coach, because they're asking me, and I say, ask the coach. So I'm telling all of you to be prepared with it, like, and you have to live it. So don't give a press conference speech, like, mean it. You can even say, up until recently, I didn't know that I needed to make this important in light of everything that's happened. This is what I'm doing. This is what I know. And even push a list to them, show them these are the organizations. I've actually reached out to the basketball players, the soccer players, whatever, track athletes. This is what they're doing. Like, this is your connected network. I think they'll really appreciate that, because they see that you really care.
Let's see. Jules, you want to take number 2?
How can I promote hiring of Black coaches? Some of you want to know that. So obviously I'm not talking about your job, but I think it's really important that you speak to your athletic director and make it clear that you want to see a more diverse staff. You want to hear from your colleagues. You want to work with more diverse people. You have a lot of influence. Get on your diversity and inclusion, you know, stuff at school, but make it really clear. That's better for you. That's better for your athletic department. That's a better recruiting tool when a Black parent looks and sees, okay, are they only on the team? Are they only on the athletic department? They want to see diversity. You can't just say we value diversity, but then when we look, it's all white faces. That doesn't jive. So I think you can go to your athletic director and say that. I really would love to see more, like, what is your policy? What are you doing? Are you being intentional about how can, maybe say it a little nicer than I'm saying it, but like, how can we be more intentional about hiring more people of color, more diverse staff? It's going to make us a better university. It's going to make us a better institution. Yeah.
I think that goes beyond. I think we all, in all of our athletic departments, have some form of a diversity statement, you know, within the department mission or values. But in practice, what does that look like? What are the actual actions being taken? And if you do look around and the majority of, you know, your entire athletic department is white, push the envelope, you know, challenge those values and say, hey, this is great that we have the words here, but what are we actually living it? And what can we do to live it and even better support our Black athletes? as well. So don't be afraid to have those conversations and step up, because it does, you know, at our level of college, it does go beyond just, you know, our little bubble of our coaching staff. It's the broader administration, you know, so that there's just more diversity. Everything that Joel said, when you have Black parents or Black recruits on campus, they see more, and that they know that, okay, this is a safe space. This is an okay space for us to be in.
Brandi, could I ask a question here? And I think, you know, very often when we're looking for grad assistant positions or assistant coaching positions, you know, people go to the NFHCA board site. Some of them get posted there, but so much is word of mouth. But I think the more that the Black Coaches Network gets established, I would really hope that we can encourage people to reach out to the Black Coaches Network to get the word out about potential grad assistant positions, assistant coaching, that becomes part of our resource to immediately reaching out to different groups than we're comfortable staying within our own conference, for example, which just perpetuates sameness. And I would really encourage that. This is what I hope this is going to do, is to broaden all of our like thinking on this.
This is, you know, again, kind of going into why we're doing the Black Field Hockey Network, why we formed this, and some things that we want to take on is, you know, if you go to the NCAA website and look at, you know, their diversity information, across all 3 divisions, there are only 5 Black head coaches. 5 out of all 3 divisions. And then assistant and head coaches, there's, I believe it's 16 total head and assistant coaches. That's about 2% across the division. Now you look at players, and Division I actually has the lowest percentage. I think it's like 1.7 or 1.8% of Division I players are Black. But across all 3 divisions, it's still only about 2%. So, you know, one of the things is with this network, with the players that we have involved, with the player forum, is allowing them to see that this space is okay, that we are out here, that you are supported. And just what you're saying, Anne, is really creating those connections and letting them know, like, you can do this, you know, you can see us. There are some of us out here, and we want to do anything we can to support you. That getting into coaching or officiating at any level is something they can do to stay involved in the sport. You know, one of the things that, you know, I would like that we've talked about to really start working on is, in general, growing the game, growing coaches, growing officials, is for us as college coaches, and, you know, working with high school and club coaches. You know, there may be some players that, you know, maybe they're like questioning, they're on the fence. I'm not sure, like, I love field hockey, but, you know, I just don't know about the full commitment, but I still want to stay involved some way. Well, so where I am at Queens, we actually have been given small scholarships to bring in and essentially recruit student assistants. So while they may not necessarily want the commitment of the physical demands of, you know, training all summer and, you know, things like that, but they still want to stay involved, we can bring them in another capacity. So how are we supporting that transition and kind of bringing them under our wing as assistants, you know, and helping out? You know, we have one player who, she played for us for 1 season, but she's like high academic achieving and has, you know, huge things she wants to do. So she said she didn't want to play anymore. Okay. But you know what? We kept her involved in the program. She is our student assistant / manager. She helps with goalkeeping during practices. You know, she has learned from our goalie coach and now is doing private lessons for youth development. You know, on the side, she comes and helps whatever we need on game day. She usually films, but she's also been a ball person. She'll travel with us to some games, but she's staying involved with the sport and, you know, helping us out at the same time, but learning, because ultimately she does want to continue to coach, you know, after she graduates from college. So what are some things that we can do to include more players in that regard as well.
I would say it's those relationships, as we talked about earlier. You have to see a Black person playing field hockey as an asset, as a very valuable, like that athlete can grow on to be a club coach, can go on to be a college coach, can help diversify the sport, can help a little Black person, a little Black girl see like, oh, that is for me. That's a coach. So keeping those lines of communication open. Did you check in on your Black athletes that you previously coached, whether it was a current institution or a previous institution that you cared about for years? Did you check on them this summer? And it's not accusatory, it's just throwing it out there of like, that is the relationship. Draw them back into the sport. Help diversify the sport. And is your network diverse? Because when these jobs come open, a lot of you can make calls, a lot of you can recommend, but if you're only recommending your friends who look just like you, that's not helping. Your personal friend group of coaches needs to diversify. And it has, because now you're here and you have, you broaden your network. I do want to be very respectful of everybody's time. It is 10:30. We have allowed it, an additional 30 minutes of conversation, but if you need to hop off, you can do that. But we will still be here.
I just want to jump in real quick, Jules. Yeah, we said it would go till 10:30. Jules, Brandi, and Mimi are very generous with their time, so they're saying that they'll stay until 11 if you want to keep the conversation going. But of course, we all have like 1,000 Zoom meetings every day, so if you have to hop off, you're welcome to right now. I do want to do one quick plug. The NFHCA has a new initiative called Circle Ups. It's small group settings that's meant to just serve as a way for you to connect with a small group of coaches. That's on our website right now, nfhca.org/resources/circle-ups. I'll put that in the chat. But I really encourage everybody to check that out and sign up for that in the future, just to keep connecting in different ways. And then before people start hopping off, I know it's cheesy, we did it yesterday, but I'm just gonna take a quick picture. So if you could just hold your coffee cup up, give me a big smile, and we'll take a quick picture and then we'll let the conversation continue. So here I go, 1, 2, 3. Thank you, everyone. And I'll turn it back over to Brandi and Jules and Mimi.
So we have done a lot of talking through this. So we really just want to open up for discussion. We've covered a lot, but what else, do you guys want to talk about or have questions about here?
Brandi, somebody had a question and I said we could address it in this.
Sure.
And it came up a couple of times when we were talking. How to the players are proactive in having a good understanding. It's their parents are having a hard time adjusting and getting on board, or they have negative opinions about what is happening. So the question was, I think Michaela, you had this. How do we talk to parents? Do you talk to parents? How do you handle parents in light of all of this? So that came up. I don't know if anybody else had that question that's on the call. Has anyone dealt with that? Chime in, speak up.
So I had a parent tell me that I was politically indoctrinating children. And so it was hard to hear. But I think what it came back to me realizing was like, I need to think more about my messaging and how I present our programs. So it's making it clear who we are and what we stand for, because that admittedly, like you were saying, we weren't thinking about, like we were caring internally, but we weren't making that messaging clear externally. So they know that their kids are going to get like politically indoctrinated. That was sort of my takeaway from that feedback. I don't know if other people have had different situations.
That's just scary.
But I think none of us like talking to parents anyways, really, about anything. So
that's my policy. I don't talk to parents. I don't talk to you about anything.
I skip a generation. I talk to
so here's this kind of another scenario to open it up a little bit more discussion or thought here. And this actually happened on my team, but I didn't find out about it till about a month later after the season had already ended. It was our senior game. We go, and this season I had 4 Black players on my team. And we go to just kind of over to the other side of our complex for our senior game, reception. Parents decorated the room, just all of that. And it just so happened that it was two of my Black players and a couple of their Black friends ended up being some of the first people in the room. One of the parents made a comment about, oh, what are all these Blacks think they're doing, or why are they all coming in here together? And again, it was one of my other senior parents, and I didn't find out about this until later. How would you handle it if somebody came and told you in that moment and said, hey, coach, this parent made this comment, or that player came to you and was like, I'm not comfortable going in there, this is ruining my senior day, and this was another senior parent? How would you handle that? What would you say?
I'll say it's easier to say it now when they're not here, if you want to trial it out.
I might suggest that they go and have their own senior moment somewhere else. Wow.
I mean, as a spouse of a coach whose team has tailgates full of extended family and, college campus friends, I think I would just say, well, but we welcome anyone who is part of our extended Queens Field Hockey family here. And like, I just think that would be a really quick moment to put that person in their place of understanding that anyone that is here supporting Queens Field Hockey is also here supporting Senior Day, and then is also welcome in this room. And if you have a problem with it, then this is not the place for you.
I think stating that made you feel uncomfortable. Whatever you said made you feel uncomfortable.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Missy.
I think what's been helpful is to look at DEI and really getting certified in it in a systematic way. Like, we have liaisons on our team, and it's not about whatever. I mean, we live in Washington, D.C. or outside. I think Steve and I probably, just because of the nature of where we live and how we live in PG County right now, and a big reason that the Big Ten shut down was probably because the athletes at Maryland aren't the same as the rest of the league, but that's in our sports realm what's going on. But to be certified locally or regionally, or even by sport, in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we can make our own kind of piece on that and develop that. And maybe it's with other coaches groups. Men's lacrosse is super active right now. Where I'm going with that example is when athletes are just certified in something so seemingly so simple and logical, then those type of things, I would hope, over time and quicker than later, would just not even be possible. Like, that just would never happen in our environment. I guess if it did, and all of a sudden I walk in and their backs are to me and they look at me, they'd be fearful, and then they'd come right in and say, oh, hi, welcome, isn't this a beautiful setting? But the reality is, I think in that environment, I would hope to think that I could address it and bring everybody together and make sure there's more of a formal introduction on who people are. I mean, there's no question the Black athletes on my team have very tight non-athletic or other sport buddies, and they're very tight. And I will be vulnerable here to say, I've always felt a little awkward in the middle of that. Same thing with perhaps the lesbian players, and they have their group from their student center, et cetera. And that's just something that if we can be certified in this place, and maybe sports specific, and think about it, if I'm certified in DEI in the best way for field hockey, I can go out to every one of those recruiting venues, clubs, Mimi. I come to you, and when you want this group of people to come and talk about field hockey, you have to be certified to do it, so that you can speak properly to the parents, to the grandparents, to the kids. I had one Black player, and you all know Janessa Pope. I know she's been very strong with the group, and she would be fine with me sharing. I know she's coaching this morning, trying to make some money on the side here. But I mean, in high school, she was told, don't play field hockey. Why aren't you doing track or basketball? And I didn't know that until this pandemic. I never knew that happened in her life. She's one of my dearest friends. So we have just I'm all over the map, which does happen to me, and I'm sorry for that. But very active in this at Maryland. Very, very, very active, and I'm eager to be involved in this DEI training, which I think educate to activate, and we can stay away from feelings a bit more.
I think with both comments that were just raised about the political indoctrination and the challenges that we would have to try to address a room if we heard something like that from one of our players, I think really one of the big challenges that I've been interested in learning about, reading about, hearing about is how can we help it be a growth moment as opposed to a wall moment. And so I really like what you said earlier about you can be say something that's a racist comment, but not necessarily be a racist yourself. And I think at the same time, maybe if we can use those kind of strategies through learning how to talk better, I think we can maybe get people to be more of an ally as opposed to feeling like they need to be excommunicated from the group now. Clearly, you know, people who ultimately are hardcore racists or people who are not willing to grow at some juncture, you know, it's not going to be something that can work within your group. But I think it's like, how can we recruit more allies to the situation? So I think it's a really tough conversation to have, certainly on the spur of the moment. And so I'm not sure I would handle it really well at the time. I think I can be much better, you know, a day or two away from something like that. But I think it's incredibly important for all of us to learn how to navigate those moments better.
I also think it's important to think about it. And as a coach, I think we all have had moments where a player has done or said something that was absolutely inappropriate. How did you handle that then? You know, and I'm coaching 9-year-olds up to 19-year-olds, and I've heard players say horrible, mean things to each other. And you have to remember that you're still a teacher, even in those moments that a player or parent might make a racist comment. So how would you handle it if a player said something inappropriate and egregious to their teammate? The way I handled it, I said, absolutely not. Go, leave right now. And it shows support for that player. And then I follow back up with the player that I told to get out of practice. And I'll say, what were you thinking? Like, where did you learn that? That's the teaching moment. But if it's hurtful, if you think it's egregious, I think like handle it in that moment, but follow up and find out why. That teaching moment, I think that's really important. The follow up is equally as important as the response.
I think through these shared conversations, what this has done for me, and to Missy's point, going through the DEI, all those trainings at school, it's great, but Brandi's scenario is something that you're just so not ready for something that happens. And it always, these moments catch us off guard. When we do the trainings, they're very sometimes very scripted things that you're prepared for. And so you've got your set answer to a challenge. Sharing some of these conversations has made me realize to have some strategies in place that if parents come into a room, that I can take a deep breath and realize this is an unscripted moment that I really need to have a response, and I'm going to take a little bit of time to think about it, but to not be afraid of that silence until I respond, and to not run away from it anymore. So thank you for doing this. And yesterday I offered up everybody's help in the future, and I know Brandi and Jules and Mimi now. There are so many questions, and so many of us want to ask you so much more. And graciously, Jules and Brandi did offer up all of your services in the future to any of us who want to reach out to you. And so I'm thanking you ahead of time.
Yes, the offer's still there. It's legit. A lot of coaches are saying they don't know how to start the conversation. Bring them to the Zoom and we will help start them for you. You're doing it right now, one, but two, like, we are here to help. We want you as white people to be better at this, to normalize conversations about race. So we're here to help. Not every Black person is here to help. There's trauma, there's frustration, there's anger. We are also dealing with that, but we want to grow the sport. We want to help create a more safe, welcoming environment. And so we're here to help.
One thing to add to what everyone's saying is I think that, you know, when these situations happen, it's that, you know, you want to come from a place, say the right things, stand up, you know, speak out. And I think at a point to like take a little pressure off, it doesn't have to be something grand and long and explaining, like in the moment, like if that, like typically you may, I think sometimes when it's like Jules, you're talking about when something's a little bit covert, like you may not know exactly what they mean and it makes you feel really uncomfortable. And that when you feel even a little bit uncomfortable in your gut, like we know what it feels like. And like that, I think, is like using that as the cue. Like, okay, this is the time where it's like you say, you know, even something small, like, you know, like Mimi said, like that's inappropriate. We don't talk like that here. Or, and then following up later, but it doesn't always have to be, I think, a grand conversation in the moment. It's like, we need to say something now. And I think the now is the most important, is addressing it and then following up later. But I think we want to have like a big, long thing, like, you know, something to really, you know, teach and learn, do something right in the moment that's a little bit big, but sometimes it's like, you're going to learn from those small steps too. And I really didn't get to that conclusion until even a conversation last night with a friend about race, and just trying to keep working through those things. And it doesn't have to be perfect, and we're going to make mistakes, and becoming more comfortable with that, which I know 3 months ago, like I was super uncomfortable, you know, and even a month ago, more you know, still uncomfortable, but like that now, like switching to my mindset, it's like when I feel that in my gut, like, okay, that's my cue, that's the time to say something. So hopefully that can be helpful for other people.
Can I ask like right versus wrong question, or like how to approach something?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm thinking about this year for the fall, creating like 4 committees, and them being community service, mental health, growing the game, and then social justice. Would it be completely wrong if I have 2 Black student athletes on my team? Would it be wrong to bring them in first and ask, like, how do you want to go about this? I don't want to force you to be on this committee, but I'm a little ignorant to the conversations and how to start them and would like your help. Is that appropriate? Is that inappropriate to put them on the spot? I would love guidance, because I personally called them both up after everything did start coming about, and I communicated with them, and they seemed to really appreciate that. But if this is going to be more exhausting to them, I don't want to put them in that situation either. So I was just asking for advice.
From my, Brandi?
Go ahead, Jules.
From my perspective, since you've already started that communication, it's fine. I would go from a, hey, I'm starting these things. Are you interested in taking a leadership role in it? And then they can say yes or no to that, or a, you know, assistant, you know, leadership position to that, as someone, and recognizing as someone who is affected more directly, or however you want to word it. Just want to, like, we're starting this. Do you want to take any leadership role in it? That's where I would come from.
I also think, like, allowing your white players the opportunity to be a part of it is important, because your white players might feel alienated, and they might project negative to the Black player, like, she's getting special treatment, I wanted to do that. I think it's okay to have a conversation in advance to say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Are you interested? They say yes. You can even then open it up to the team. They've been thinking about this. I know that Mimi is going to be a part of it. Is anybody else interested? So I think allowing the rest of the team to participate, because they might be as passionate as the Black players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just looking for like someone to head each one of these committees, and I would like to somewhat hand pick those people, but then create like a Google form for people to choose which committee they're interested in being on. So I was hoping one of them would head the committee, but I agree, I would open it to everybody. I just wasn't sure if it was appropriate to bring those 2 Black student athletes in and ask them directly.
I think so. If you've already spoken to them, I think it's totally appropriate to ask them if they want to head it. If you're picking the people, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you.
And also I'll add, we handpick a lot of stuff, us coaches. And so you could, they reached out first. And so, yep, they're the head of it. What do they know? You know what I mean? Like,
Can we get to another question that's on the form? There's one that says, sometimes I feel like I'm not sure if it's appropriate to dedicate certain practices to the topic of racism and what we can learn or do about it. What's the best way to approach this? So I think as a coach, we have the culture of our team and we have what's important to us. Like you have some teams that they're amazing at basic fundamentals and you can look at that team and you can say that that's important. Well, they got to that place because they're always practicing and the coach is stressing fundamentals. I think you handle this in the same way. If social justice is important to you, then you make it part of what you and your team do. If it's not, it's just not. It doesn't mean you can't do it. But I think it's appropriate if you find it important to you and important to your team and your cause.
And putting it out there too, extension of what Mimi just said is if maybe it's the team doesn't have an interest in doing certain things, but maybe there's only like one or two people, going back to what we talked about earlier, like where can they get involved on campus? What are other organizations and groups on campus that they can put that energy into if maybe the team isn't necessarily interested or going to do something. So making sure that you have those resources on hand as well.
It's appropriate. I would say, especially particularly at the college level, like you integrate it into everything you do, just like you do the fundamental. You start every practice off with the fundamentals. Like for me, I'm a very big positivity person, so we start every practice off with positivity. We end it with positivity. We're gonna weave race in there somehow, right? Like, because it's important. We want to normalize it. It's a big part of. It's important, and I'm gonna help steer that importance. I'm gonna help you, my team, these 20 people, be better about talking about race. So we practice it every day.
Yeah, and just think. Players don't like certain things. We didn't like conditioning, but we had to do it, right? So players they may not like it, but you are the leader and you set the tone. So if it's important to you, they will get on board. And what do we do when we have a player that doesn't make the run test or can't stop, handle it in the same way. It doesn't have to be any different.
They're sure missing running sprints right now. They're telling me they would do anything to be on the end line, and they hate it during the season. They would pay money to get on the end line right now.
I do want to touch on barriers come up a lot. Barriers to field hockey. And a lot of the one that people point to the most frequently is financial. Field hockey is a rich white sport. Please stop saying that. The more you say it, the more true it is, right? It is not. And when you say that, then I feel like, okay, I am not a super affluent white person, so I guess it's not for me. So we have to stop saying that. It's also not the biggest barrier to field hockey. The biggest barrier is the fact that it's not a nationally recognized, like it's not, you don't just walk out across a park and see people playing field hockey. We're not everywhere. The second biggest barrier is that when you do see field hockey, they don't look like me, right? They're white people playing the sport. So that's the second biggest barrier, is that when you see it, okay, now it's a bunch of white people. Then the third barrier is financial, but that's only if you're trying to play Division I. Like there are plenty of other programs that are not super wealthy or super, you know what I mean? So we just kind of have to stop saying that of like, oh, barrier and access and these coded words. It's not financial. That's not the biggest barrier to field hockey. We want to grow the game. We want to be everywhere. We want to be right there with the soccer ball and then the basketball and the track that's everywhere running. Like field hockey wants to be just as big as all these other sports so we can get in front of eyes. And then we also want them to reflect more, look more like our country and be more racially diverse?
Yeah, I'm gonna give the perspective as a club coach, the barriers. So I live in Maryland, so I'm in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. The biggest barrier is finances, because there are so many clubs and there's so many clubs. The second barrier is lacrosse. So, and I say that meaning I lose players to lacrosse because they commit to lacrosse programs early, because sometimes it's not as expensive because they have more players. When I can recognize any athlete, especially a Black player, that is good and I might lose her to lacrosse, I make accommodations. I do not, this is why I started my club. I didn't want money to be an issue why a great player, Black or white, did not get the opportunity to go to college. So once I can recognize that player, they're good, there's potential, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that they have an opportunity to play. So I think within your region, the barriers might be a little bit different, but they're all going to be the same. And it is really important that for Black players, if they see somebody that looks like them, especially when a sport that we're underrepresented, they're more apt to do it when they say, oh, look, there's a Black girl. Oh, she went to college. Oh, look what she's doing. So reach out, use us. If it's getting Black players to play, half of that barrier is letting them know that Black players do play and there's somebody that looks just like you. And then money, college coaches can't really do anything about that, connect with the high school and the club coaches, but there's a way to get around that as well. And you can look at those lacrosse players and know that they're going to be really good field hockey players. And what are you going to do to pull them over? Pull them over. Yes, pull them over. That's my thought. I'm thinking as a coach, it happens.
And you can play both sports in college.
Yes, you can. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Any other questions that you guys have off the top of your head, or ones that you burning ones? Again, it's a safe space. Just throw it out there.
I guess just one, we only have a couple more minutes here, but one interesting one, and just a statement that was sent in to us, but another coach in somebody's department said, I don't want to take a stand on Black Lives Matter and anti-racist issues because it will turn away some of my players and their families. I guess my comment or question on this is, what have the conversations been within your athletic department? Are there any policies? Are there anything like that in place? Is your university taking a bigger stance on any of these issues, and what that looks like? Anybody?
Our athletic department hasn't really discussed anything Black Lives Matter and the movement. I know that the president and everyone has, the cabinet has put out emails to the students and help initiatives or whatnot, but at least from a department standpoint hasn't really happened. There's one coach who is has been trying to get people do a book club or do something, but I don't even know how her the communication hasn't been great either. So I'd say it's pretty non-existent. So where I'm seeing it more is talking with colleagues, some colleagues that I'm closer with, especially within the pandemic, and then just talking to some of my players more on an individual basis when I check in. but I'm floored to hear. I guess it's like I shouldn't be surprised that some coaches saying that. It's just it's so frustrating every time to hear things like that, and it's like we just have to stop being like, oh, that's bad, and be like, no, that's not acceptable, like that's crap, like and yeah, sorry, I just get so frustrated when I hear that, and it's yeah, so I didn't even know that would be something.
So okay, I know we're done. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
but
you're amazing.
how you leave space for growth. Like, I came into college and I was taught that homosexuality was a sin. So like, you can grow, right? And so do you blame these kids for their parents? And like, if that had been an open thing that they talked about, maybe like my parents wouldn't have wanted me to go where I went, but I went and I grew and I'm different. So it just gets complicated of taking a stand and being open, but also like, these kids are not their parents, but I don't know what the answer is. It's just hard.
Yeah. I know we're on time, and Jules and Brandi, my parting words are, change is hard and it's scary. And I think that somebody else said it, if you feel it in your body, it's important. And you have to figure out what you want to do about it. Like, no matter what you do, if you feel it in your body, somebody says something, you see something, physiologically, your body's going to respond. Use that as your cue to get more information, figure out what you have to do. And it takes courage to be the only one. It takes courage to stand up. And just think, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? What example do you want to set? And it doesn't just have to be about being an anti-racist. It's everything. You feel it in your body, respond. And opening your mouth and like that first word is the hardest, but you'll be so proud of yourself after you do it. You'll feel so good. Jules?
Off of, kind of off of what Mimi said, final words, is, and Mark, I think it was Margaret, you mentioned this, is just, it doesn't have to be a big thing. Just have that one phrase in the back of your mind already. And somebody else, I think Mimi mentioned it too, like, practice it, whether it's hey, what do you mean by that? Or, hey, we don't talk like that, and just keep it moving, and then you kind of have a little time to collect your thoughts and have a discussion maybe later. But prepare yourself for those moments, kind of rehearse it in your head, rehearse saying it out loud. But even as we've gone through these discussions with different scenarios, that all of them that we've talked about, they have happened. Think about those. Think about, come up with other scenarios in your mind, or talk to other coaches. What scenarios have they faced? And think about, how can you respond to those? What would you do in those situations? So moving forward, you're that much better prepared for those types of situations, and just being proactive.
Thank you. My parting words are thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for staying the full, like, extra 32 minutes. Sorry, Kirsten. This is just huge. I just appreciate people being willing to sit and grow and be uncomfortable and hear and learn. We as coaches challenge our players. That's big, right? You want to challenge them to be better. They're allowed to make mistakes. So are you. You're going to make mistakes, but you're going to keep trying. Use us as a resource. Email us. We will help you start the conversation. So thank you. It's just a sincere thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I can echo everybody on the call that I'm sure everybody's feeling the same way. Thank you, Brandi, Jules, Mimi, so much for spending an hour and 33 minutes talking to us this morning and sharing your experiences and keeping the conversation going. And not just this, but your work to this point to make this all happen. So thank you very much. And thank you to everybody for joining us this morning. And I know there'll be some resources coming your way from the Blackfield Hockey Network that will be really helpful, and encourage everybody to check those out and spend some time with those resources and all that stuff. So thank you, everyone. Stopping the recording.
Thank you.
Yeah, I did